Rain never truly stopped in that corner of northern Germany, not in the late spring of '45, and certainly not in our bones. It seeped through the frayed hems of our dresses, through the split soles of boots we'd scavenged from bombed-out villages, through the thinning wool that had once been part of someone else's Sunday best. We were women. Not soldiers in the eyes of Geneva, not even prisoners in any proper sense justi. The British called our enclosure camp Hildesee, though it bore no lake, no trees worth naming. Only barbed wire and rows of quonset huts, ringed by watchtowers, manned by boys who looked younger than the rifles they clutched. I remember the damp weight of my hair against my neck, the way the skin between my fingers had cracked into a map of red fissures. We were 23 women huddled in Hut 7, though we'd arrived with more. Dysentery had taken to silence. Another. Not a dramatic silence, no weeping, no raving, but the kind that hollows a person until there's nothing left to echo. We spoke little. Words were currency now, and none of us had much to spare. Still, when the rumble of the supply truck cut through the usual drone of wind and distant artillery, Allied guns still cleaning up pockets of resistance, even weeks after Berlin fell, we all looked up at once. Something was coming. Corporal Finch appeared an hour later, flanked by 2 privates lugging burlap sacks that clinked faintly, like chains dragging through gravel. He was English, mid-20s, with a jaw too square for his frame and eyes that flickered away whenever they met ours. He hadn't spoken to us directly since our arrival, always relaying orders through a clipboard or a shouted directive from the gate. But today, he stepped inside. "Right," he said, clearing his throat as if dislodging something unpleasant. "You're to be issued new clothing." A murmur rippled through us, not hope, not yet, but the barest tremor of attention. Ilse, the former schoolteacher from Dresden, shifted her weight, her knuckles whitening around the edge of her cot. I watched her. Then the sacks as they hit the dirt floor with a wet thud. Finch unrolled the top sack. Out tumbled uniforms, gray wool, stiff with dried sweat, reeking of lye and something sharper, something metallic. Not German field gray, not even close. These were Polish army tunics, Soviet greatcoats, even a few patched Wehrmacht jackets that looked suspiciously fresh, as though stripped from bodies not long cold. Some board unit insignia we recognized from the Eastern Front, very men who'd raised our towns, raped our neighbors, shot our brothers in ditches outside Minsk. One greatcoat still had a smear of dark blood along the collar. "You'll take them," Finch said, voice flat. "No alternatives. Logistics are stretched. This is what's available." For a moment, no one moved. Then Greet, barely 19 and shivering in a threadbare nightgown she'd worn since Dresden, reached out. Her fingers hovered over a Polish tunic, then recoiled as if burned. "They fought with the Ivans," she whispered. "They burned my village." Finch shifted. "They fought against your people." "Yes, but they're dead now. You're not." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Wear the clothes of your enemies, or freeze, die of exposure, succumb to the rot that crept up our legs each night. Practicality wore the uniform of compassion, but its face was cruelty masked as necessity. I looked around the hut's all. The hollow cheeks, the chapped lips bitten raw from silence, the eyes that had witnessed too much to ever trust kindness again. And yet, something stirred in that silence. Not rebellion, not yet, but refusal, a quiet, collective recoil. Ilse stood. She didn't speak. She simply stepped forward, knelt, and with deliberate care folded the tunic Finch had offered her back into the sack. Then she walked to the far wall and sat, hands in her lap, spine straight as a rifle barrel. One by one, the others followed. Not with protest, not with words, just hands withdrawing, bodies turning away, eyes fixed on the floor or the far window where rain blurred the world into gray watercolor. Greet began to cry, not loudly, just a slow leak of salt and exhaustion, but she didn't touch the clothes. Finch watched us, his face tight. He'd expected gratitude, or at least submission. What he got was something colder, sharper. Dignity, stubborn as frost. He gave a short, frustrated exhale. "You'll regret this," he muttered, more to himself than to us. Then he ordered the privates to gather the sacks. As they left, the door creaked shut behind them, and the rain returned to fill the silence. But I knew we all knew this wasn't over. The choice had been made. Now the consequences would walk in on their own boots. 3 days passed without a word from the administration. Rations grew thinner, watery turnip stew, stretched with sawdust, bread so stale it cracked like kindling between our teeth. The cold deepened in our bones, as if winter had doubled back to claim us one last time. Greet's cough worsened, a wet rattle that shook her thin frame each night, and Ilsa spent hours rubbing her back with a scrap of flannel torn from her own underskirt. There was no medicine, no coal for the stove that squatted rusted and useless in the corner. Still, no one mentioned the uniforms, not even in whispers. To speak of them would be to admit their ghosts still haunted us, and we had already buried it with silence. Then, on the 4th morning, the truck returned. Not the usual supply vehicle, but a staff car, black, mud-splattered, its engine a low growl that set our nerves alight. 2 officers emerged, Finch, looking grim, and a taller man in a Major S uniform whose polished boots clicked against the wet gravel like metronome ticks. He carried a leather satchel, and his eyes pale blue, almost colorless, swept over us, as though tallying inventory. "Major Croft," Finch said by way of introduction, though none of us moved to greet him. He didn't seem to expect it. Instead, Croft unslung the satchel and opened it with the reverence of a priest unveiling relics. Out came folded garments gray, but not the gray of Soviet wool or Polish fatigue. These were new, or nearly so, simple cotton shifts, thick stockings, serviceable shoes, plain, unadorned, neutral. Nothing that carried the scent of another's suffering. A humanitarian gesture, Croft said, his voice smooth as oiled steel. "The War Office has been advised of your sensitivities." He paused, letting the word hang like a test. "These are manufactured in Glasgow, never worn, never issued. You may consider them a compromise." Ilsa stepped forward again, but slower this time, her expression unreadable. She lifted one of the shifts from his hand, held it to the dim light, filtering through the grimy window. The fabric was coarse but clean, the stitching tight, practical, innocent. "And if we refuse?" she asked, her voice barely above the hum of the wind. Croft's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then you remain as you are. But understand, this year classification is pending review. Refusal to cooperate may be interpreted as evidence of continued allegiance to the former regime, which could affect your repatriation status, or your transfer to a more secure facility." The threat was wrapped in bureaucracy, but its teeth were sharp. A secure facility meant a prison camp, possibly 4 years. We had heard rumors women held indefinitely, labeled unreconstructable, shipped to labor colonies in the Commonwealth. Our silence, once an act of moral clarity, now risked becoming a sentence. I watched Elsa's fingers tighten around the shift. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in her, not about the rightness of our stance, but about the price of holding it. Was dignity worth exile? Was purity worth perpetual punishment? The war was over, but the machinery of control ground on, indifferent to nuance. That night, after the officers left, and the camp settled into its usual rhythm of groans and distant patrols, Greet whispered to me in the dark, "Do you think they'll really send us away?" I didn't answer. Instead, I thought of my mother, who'd scrubbed floors for French officers in 40 rather than let us starve, and who never spoke of it again. Survival leaves stains that soap can't lift. By dawn, Ilsa had made her decision. She laid the Glasgow shift on her cot, untouched. Then she gathered the women in a circle, not with words, but with standing in the center of the hut, hands clasped, head high. One by one, we joined her. No speeches, no declarations, just presence. A silent wall of women choosing cold over complicity, uncertainty over surrender. We would not wear the clothes of our enemies. We would not wear the clothes of our saviors. We would wear our hunger like armor. And We waited. The silence after our second refusal curdled into something heavier than mere tension. It became a presence, coiled in the rafters, seeping through the cracks in the floorboards. Watching from the watchtowers, with narrowed eyes, Major Croft did not return, but his absence spoke louder than any threat. Rations vanished entirely for 2 days. Then came only a single loaf per hut, divided among 23 women with shaking hands and hollow stomachs. Water, when it arrived, carried the taste of rust and disinfectant. We drank it anyway. Greet's fever climbed, her skin burning under fingers that had grown too thin to press with any real force. Ilsa stayed by her side, humming fragments of lullabies in a voice worn threadbare, her own ribs visible beneath the torn cotton of her dress. Still, no one spoke of surrender. Then, on the 5th morning, Finch returned alone. No satchel, no entourage dustum, standing in the doorway with his cap in his hands, the rain slicking his hair to his forehead like a pen. He looked older than his years, his eyes shadowed, the square jaw slack with something that wasn't quite fatigue. He didn't announce himself. He simply stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and for the first time, met our gazers without flinching. "They're talking about transferring you," he said quietly, "to a facility near Liverpool. Maximum security, indefinite review." No one reacted outwardly, but I felt the shift in the air, the tightening of spines, the slow intake of breath held too long. Liverpool meant oblivion. It meant vanishing into the administrative fog of post-war reckoning, where women like us, neither combatants nor civilians, neither heroes nor monsters, could rot for years without trial or witness. Finch glanced at Greet, curled under a threadbare blanket, her breathing shallow. "She won't survive the journey," he said. "Not as a warning, but as a fet." Then, after a beat, "I've seen what they do in those places. Paperwork disappears. Medical requests go unanswered. People stop being people." Ilsa studied him, not with suspicion, not yet, but with the careful attention of someone weighing a single drop of water in a drought. "Why? Tell us this." He hesitated, looked away, then back. "Because I was at Bergen-Belsen." The name landed like a stone in still water. We'd heard the rumors, of course whispers traded in hushed tones, even before the Reich fell, but to hear it from his mouth, so flat and raw, was different. He wasn't boasting, he was confessing. "I helped carry bodies out," he continued, voice low. "Women in rags, women who'd been stripped bare, then layered in stolen clothes as SS uniforms, Red Cross coats, children's dresses taken from the dead. Anything to cover them, anything to pretend they still had shape. Dignity." He swallowed hard. I swore then I'd never see anyone forced to wear the dead again. A long silence stretched between us, thick with memory and rain. He wasn't offering a deal. He wasn't even apologizing. He was standing in the wreckage of his own conscience, offering us the only thing he had left: honesty. Then, from the corner, Greet coughed a wet, tearing sound that ended in a whimper. Finch flinched as if struck. Ilsa stood, walked to her cot, took Greet's hand in both of hers. Then she turned to Finch. "What do you propose?" He exhaled, as if he'd been holding that breath since April. "There's a shipment coming tomorrow, civilian clothing, sourced from a displaced persons depot in Hamburg. Nothing military, nothing. Tainted. Just dresses, coats, shoes. Some were worn, yes, but clean. And they belonged to no army." He paused. "But I can't issue them officially. Not without Croft's approval. If he finds out, you'll be court-martialed," I said. He gave a grim half-smile. "Or Warsaw LLB, reassigned to desk duty in Surrey for the rest of my life." We understood then. This was not charity. It was conspiracy. A quiet rebellion of his own, stitched together from guilt and decency and the unbearable memory of what happens when human beings become inventory. Ilsa looked at each of us, 20 faces gaunt with hunger, eyes sharp with exhaustion and resolve. We had refused twice to trade our dignity for survival. But this was different. This wasn't the enemy's cast-offs. This wasn't a trap wrapped in pragmatism. This was a man offering us back a sliver of our humanically, quietly, at great personal risk. She turned back to Finch. When? Tonight. After lights out. I'll leave the boxers behind the latrine shed. Take what you need. Burn the rest. No vote was taken. None was needed. We had already chosen our path long ago. Only the form of our defiance had changed. As Finch turned to leave, I said his name. He stopped, hand on the door. Why us? I asked. He didn't look back, because someone has to remember that you were people before you were prisoners. Then he was gone, and the rain swallowed his footsteps. That night, we waited in the dark, not for salvation, but for the fragile, dangerous gift of being seen. Midnight came cloaked in mist, the kind that clung to skin and muffled sound as if the earth itself conspired to hide us. We moved in silence, no orders. No whispers, just the soft slide of bare feet on wet earth, the rustle of threadbare fabric against thighs bruised from cold. 23 women, ghosts in our own right, slipping from the hut like smoke through cracks. The latrine shed loomed ahead, a sagging silhouette against the dull glow of a distant searchlight. Behind it, 3 wooden crates, set stacked beneath a tarp weighted with stones. Ilsa knelt first, peeling back the tarp with hands that trembled not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of hope. Inside, dresses of faded floral cotton, wool coats patched at the elbows, stockings rolled tight like secrets, shoes mismatched but whole. Nothing grand, nothing pristine, just clothes that had belonged to women who'd lost everything, like Uzbat had once been warm, once been dressed with care. Greet, wrapped in a blanket carried by 2 others, reached into the crate and pulled out a child's coat too small, but lined with rabbit fur. She held it to her cheek and wept soundlessly. I chose a gray dress with a high collar and mended seams, the kind my grandmother might have worn to market. It smelled of lavender and wood smoke, not the scent of war, not the stench of death, just life, ordinary and fleeting. We did not speak as we dressed. There was no joy in it, not exactly, only a quiet restoration, like reassembling a shattered vase, one fragment at a time. When we were done, we looked at one another, not as prisoners, not as enemies, but as women, again. Not German, not allied, just human, tired, scarred, but undimmed. Then, as if on cue, we turned the remaining garments into a pyre. Not out of spite, but necessity. If Croft found evidence of the exchange, Finch would hang for it. We arranged the crates, doused them with kerosene stolen from the mess hall, and struck a match. The flames rose slow at first, then leaped hungrily, casting long, dancing shadows that looked, for a moment, like women dancing. By dawn, only ash remained. They found us standing in formation when the roll call whistle blew, an act of defiance in itself, for we had never mustered before. Croft arrived within the hour, his face tight with suspicion. He paced before us, eyes scanning our new clothes, nostrils flaring at the faint temps of smoke in the air. "Where do these come from?" he demanded. Ilsa stepped forward. "From the wind," she said. "From the earth, from the silence you left us." He stared at her, then at each of us in turn. We held his gaze, not with hatred, not with triumph, just with the unyielding stillness of those who have chosen their own terms of survival. He could have ordered us stripped, could have sent us to Liverpool that very hour, but something in our posture, the way we stood not as supplicants, but as witnesses, gave him pause. Perhaps he saw what Finch had seen, not defeated women, but the unbearable clarity of moral choice made in extremis. He turned on his heel without another word. 2 days later, repatriation notices arrived. Not for Liverpool, not for indefinite dissension, but for home names, towns, train numbers. We would be returned to a Germany in ruins. Yes, but as civilians. As people. Finch was gone by then. Reassigned, they said. No farewell, no acknowledgement. But on the morning of our departure, I found a small parcel tucked beneath my cut. A notebook, its pages blank, and a pencil sharpened to a fine point. On the inside cover, in neat scriptin writed down, "Someone must remember." And so I do, not as a soldier, not as a victim, but as a woman who once stood naked in the rain of history and chose, with 22 others, to clothe herself in dignity rather than surrender. That choice did not win the war. It did not feed the starving or heal the broken, but it reminded us, in the darkest corner of a world that had forgotten our names, that we were still capable of saying no, not to clothes, not to survival, but to the slow erosion of the soul. And sometimes, in the silence after such a refusal, humanity finds a way to return.